T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
It's a shit scene.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
It's a shit scene.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
It's a shit scene.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Across the shit fire.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I got a really exciting episode for you guys, man. We're going to be discussing the current state of the running back market. There were a lot of running backs who tweeted out their frustrations about where the running back market is right now, with Josh Jacobs and Saquon not getting long-term extensions done. And I think there's a harsh reality that running backs are going to have to end up dealing with and coming to peace with. I'm going to talk about that. Will DeAndre Hopkins be underutilized with the Tennessee Titans? Because I keep seeing a lot of people saying, man, DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to do anything. He's going to end up just like Julio Jones. I don't know about that. I think a lot of y'all are counting out DeAndre Hopkins, and he's about to prove a lot of you guys wrong. Will the Buffalo Bills miss the playoffs? One of my friends tells me that the Bills aren't going to be a playoff team this year. I'm going to say why I disagree with him. Brent Venables took shots at Coach Prime. We got to talk about that. We don't understand over here on JT Sports why Coach Prime continues to get so much hate, but we're going to dive into Brent Venable's criticisms of Coach Prime, and then we're going to get into some early week one previews, man. We're going to be breaking down why Colorado has a chance to upset TCU. Did you know that Colorado is a 19.5 point underdog going into that week one matchup against the Horned Frogs? I can't believe that people are sleeping this hard on Coach Prime and the Buffs, but they have a chance to pull off the upset. And lastly, how good is Quinn Ewers going to be for the Texas Longhorns this year? Before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure that you go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. We go live every day at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Listen to the audio version of the JT Sports Podcast. We're not just available on YouTube. You can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and you want to support the pod, all you got to do is go to Apple and Spotify, type in the JT Sports Podcast, and leave us with a 5-star review. And if you don't want to do that, you can go down to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. The running back market is in a really bad situation. Running backs like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, who are considered arguably the best at their positions, cannot get long-term deals. And I think that running backs have a right to be frustrated. We saw Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, CMC tweet out their frustrations and their grievances with the fact that their running back brotherhood can't get paid what they feel they deserve. And here's the harsh reality that these running backs have to come to cusp with. And that just is the simple fact that, yes, you may be a great running back, but it's other good running backs who you can sign for less money and possibly draft without having to pay them a lot of money on their rookie deals. So when you look at all these running back frustrations, it's like, yeah, I get it, but at the same time, what can you guys do about it? You can't hold out, because if you end up holding out and your replacement ends up being better than you, then what's going to happen to you? All they're going to do is be like, you know what, you can just go ahead and continue to hold out because we already found your replacement. So Josh Jacobs, if he ends up holding out into the season and misses a couple of games, and Zamir White ends up going off, or Amir Abdullah ends up going off, then he already knows he's not going to get a contract extension, because the running back position is one of those positions in the NFL where there's just a surplus at talent. I mean, look at the free agent running backs that are on the market right now. You could get Leonard Fournette for a discount compared to paying a guy like a Dalvin Cook or Josh Jacobs. And you can still get the job done with the Leonard Fournette. And there was an interesting graphic that I saw on Twitter earlier today. So these are the last couple of Super Bowl winning teams dating back to 2009, their leading rusher and how much his base salary was. And you go back to the last couple of Super Bowl champions, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they won the Super Bowl with Isaiah Pacheco. He was a late round pick. His base salary isn't even $1 million. Cam Akers with the Rams, Leonard Fournette with the Bucks. Leonard Fournette is one of the highest paid running backs on this list, and he wasn't even all that spectacular. And where is he now? I mean, you look at other guys on this list, Damian Williams, Sony Michel, LeGarrette Blount twice, CJ Anderson, and although some of these running backs had to step up due to injuries, you don't see nobody on this list that was getting paid more than $2.5 million. You look at Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs' situation, and you remember what you just saw on that graphic I just showed you. Why would you pay any of those running backs over $10 million a year when there have been teams in the past who have won paying way less at that position? Now, every team has a different playing style where they may need more of a elite back that has a great skill set, but it's not going to determine if they make the Super Bowl or not. What's going to determine if a team's able to win the Super Bowl is how good are they passing the football? Do they have a good offensive line? And do you have good enough wide receivers on the outside to make the plays like the Cincinnati Bengals do? And for these running backs, they got to realize that the only way you're going to be able to demand a salary exceeding $10 million a year is if you're able to not just be an elite running back, but you also have to be a really good wideout as well. You got to be a weapon. And that's why I believe Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to save the running back market, because they're not really just running backs. They also have a skill set at wideout that's the equivalent to a wide receiver 2 on any other team. So you look at the ability to not just use Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson at running back, and the mismatch that creates by itself with them being guarded by linebackers, but imagine them at receiver or in the slot. They're going to be a handful for defensive backs because they're really good route runners too. And after the catch, you don't want to see a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson against a defensive back, because it's not going to look pretty for the DB. You look at guys like Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, they don't have the kind of skill set that guys like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs have. There are more running backs entering the league now that are not just running backs, but they also are really great receivers. They are big assets in the passing game. Now, you look at Austin Eckler, I think a reason why he can't get an extension is just because of his age. But if he was a couple of years younger, I think he could have the right to demand a kind of contract that requires you to pay them somewhat as not just a running back, but a wide receiver also. Similar to Deebo Samuel. I think Deebo Samuel is the perfect example for this. Deebo Samuel, the reason why he's getting paid so much money is not just because how good he is as a receiver, but also how good he is at running back. You see, you got to have that position versatility. A team has to be able to use you multiple ways. So therefore, when you come to the negotiation table, you can't let a team lowball you and say, oh man, we're just going to give you $10 million a year. You're a running back. You don't deserve more than that. And you can counter that and say, okay, yeah, I am a running back, but also look how good I am as a receiver. Look at my numbers. I'm just as good as a wide receiver too on this team. So you not only just have to pay me based on the fact that I'm not only just a running back, but I'm also a really good receiver as well, a wide receiver too at that. You see, that's the harsh reality for these running backs. And if you're an upcoming running back in high school, college, you don't need to change your position. There's people that are now starting to say, don't play running back. You can get paid a lot of money playing running back. You just have to have a versatile skill set. Make yourself become a player that can't be replaced, at least easily. Yeah, there's a lot of running backs that you can find that can give you good production, but there's not a lot of running backs that not only are just good runners, but they're also really good receivers. That makes you a weapon. If you're a running back that can not only be effective as a runner, but they can line you out at receiver or in the slot, and you're really effective out there, you're going to increase your value. So these running backs like Saquon and Josh Jacobs, you ask what separates them from Christian McCaffrey, the fact that Christian McCaffrey kind of has that ability to line out wide. You can also use him in the slot. Those other guys don't really have that kind of skill set. And until more running backs start to, elevate their game, they're going to continue to get undervalued. Look at some of the highest paid running backs in the league. Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry. A lot of those guys aren't making anything to what Christian McCaffrey's making because none of those guys have the kind of skill set that McCaffrey has. No offense to those guys, they're really good running backs, but until you're able to bring a lot of value to your team in the passing game, you're not going to be valued how you feel you should if you're a running back. The league isn't what it used to be in the early 2000s, in the early 2010s when running backs were nearly the everything. You want to know why? Because now they say it's a passing league. And this graphic that I just showed y'all a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to show y'all again. It shows you how much the league has changed. You guys got to see this. Some of you guys got to stop pushing back and stop trying to make arguments for why the game is still the same as it's ever been, because it's not. The game has been through revolutions. And the new revolution is throwing the freaking football with a great quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow. Quarterbacks are at a premium. The Cincinnati Bengals took Jamar Chase in the first round when everybody said they needed to take an offensive tackle, just after Joe Burrow got killed in his rookie season. And yet, they end up going to the Super Bowl. They go outside of the norm. They draft Jamar Chase in the first round. And then after that, you got a bunch of other teams who are saying, we don't really care about the offensive line. Just give us a great quarterback and a good wide receiving core, and let's just see what we can do with that. You see, you look at these running backs now, if you don't have the kind of skill set where you can be valued highly and effectively in the passing game, you're not going to be valued all that much. Alvin Kamara I don't really think he's in the same vote as some of the running backs who are talking about them being underpaid just because of his versatility. We need more running backs that have the scat back skill set. And they also have to kind of have like the physical intangibles that Saquon Barkley has. You got to be a freak athlete. And Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson are the definition of that. I believe that Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to be able to reset the running back market because they're not just great, effective running backs as runners, but they also have the ability to be highly effective in the passing game. Not just catching passes out the backfield, but you can line them out wide in the slot or at wide receiver, and they have good route running that's good enough to be the equivalent to a wide receiver too. That's why I believe Bijan and Jahmyr are going to set a new standard for what teams are going to be looking for out of running backs. Nobody's looking for those old school running backs that they get the ball, they north and south with it, and they pick up yards. It's like, yeah, okay, but the running backs that are going to end up getting the most bread and the ones that are going to be the highest paid in the foreseeable future are going to be the guys who have elite running back skill set, but also have a really good skill set to be utilized as wideouts and be effective with it. Deebo Samuel is not just getting paid as a receiver, but he's also getting paid as a running back as well. That's why his contract is so unique. He's called a wide back. We need more wide backs in the NFL. So when you look at the state of the running back position right now, the harsh truth for these running backs that are on Twitter complaining, yeah, they got a right to feel like they deserve to get paid more. Everybody has the right to feel like they deserve more. But what reality is just this. Teams can easily find productive running back play. And the teams that have won the Super Bowl over the last decade have done it not paying more than $2.5 million on a running back. So Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, I know you feel like you deserve to get paid more, but it just is the simple reality that teams have been able to win championships giving way less to that position. And Tony Pollard probably should play on the franchise tag. I think the only reason why he isn't able to really get more money is simply for the fact that he's coming off that injury last year. I think that Tony Pollard does have a pretty unique skill set. He does bring a little effectiveness into the passing game. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how his situation plays out, because I definitely think that he kind of has that new age running back skill set that I was alluding to earlier. But let me know what you guys think about my harsh reality for the NFL running back market right now. A lot of you guys have been hitting me up saying, man, JT, DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to work. You're in the comment section of my DeAndre Hopkins to Tennessee video saying that he's going to be another Julio Jones. The Tennessee Titans aren't going to know how to use DeAndre Hopkins, JT. Tennessee is going to be the place where wide receivers go to die. And listen, I don't think that the Titans are going to waste DeAndre Hopkins' talents. All right, and I got to explain to you guys why I feel this way. This is the same organization that doesn't know how to get wide receivers like DeAndre Hopkins the ball, right? But didn't they just have A.J. Brown on their roster a couple of years ago before they traded him away? Tennessee is more than capable of being able to know how to utilize talented wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is not washed up. DeAndre Hopkins, when he was on the field after his suspension for Arizona, he was as dominant as ever. This is somebody who was still making things shake in Houston before he had Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, and I keep trying to tell you guys this, and you guys don't listen to me, but the reason why DeAndre Hopkins still has a couple of more years of elite level play is because he's a Hall of Fame caliber football player. Hall of Fame level players regress at a slower rate than normal players do. Tom Brady played way past the life expectancy of a starting NFL quarterback. Same thing with Larry Fitzgerald. So it's like Hall of Fame caliber players, they just regress at a slower rate than your normal player. So DeAndre Hopkins, although he's in his 30s, he probably still has 3 to 4 years left of high elite level wide receiver play. Last year, DeAndre Hopkins still looked like a wide receiver one to me. He still looked like a top 10 wideout to me in my eyes. And Ryan Tannehill is a pretty solid quarterback. I think that Ryan Tannehill is a little bit underrated. Not fully underrated, because I don't think that a lot of people are like completely sleeping on Ryan Tannehill. I don't think people be like, oh, like Ryan Tannehill is garbage. But Ryan Tannehill is a top 15 QB. I don't feel like a lot of people look at Ryan Tannehill as a top 15 QB, but he's good enough to be able to get DeAndre Hopkins the football. It's not like he had any issues getting the ball to A.J. Brown. So you give him a DeAndre Hopkins, I think that DeAndre Hopkins is still able to be a top 10 level wideout in this league. The Tennessee Titans don't have any interest in tanking. It really just comes down to if their offensive coordinator is going to be able to scheme up ways to get DeAndre Hopkins involved. Then that shouldn't be too hard. What does DeAndre Hopkins do best? Go up and moss people in those 50-50 ball situations. So all you got to do is dial up a 9 route and tell Ryan Tannehill to throw that freaking ball downfield. It's not that hard.
Come on now, dog.
It's not that hard.
Come on, man.
All Ryan Tannehill literally has to do is throw the football up if DeAndre Hopkins gets one-on-one coverage on the outside, and DeAndre Hopkins is going to come down with it 80% of the time. It's not that hard to get DeAndre Hopkins involved. You literally, all you got to do is throw the football up to him. That's literally all you got to do. So I don't really see how the Tennessee Titans can waste DeAndre Hopkins. This isn't somebody who is in the same career situation that Julio Jones was. Julio Jones, after that situation with Atlanta happened, was pretty much on the decline. This was somebody who has been incredibly injury prone throughout his career. Come on, man. Like, y'all make it seem like Julio Jones was this Iron Man for his whole entire career. Like, he even played through injuries. But even then, when Julio Jones was at his best, he was that guy. But you look at DeAndre Hopkins, he doesn't kind of have the injury history that Julio Jones had at this stage of his career. DeAndre Hopkins, although he has some injuries that kept them off the field for, over the last, 2 years or so, they haven't really been injuries that have been sustaining for previous years. And DeAndre Hopkins is normally a pretty reliable player. Julio Jones was coming in to Tennessee not nearly as close to what he was in Atlanta. We saw a washed up version of Julio Jones in Tennessee, and it pains me to say that, but DeAndre Hopkins didn't show anything last year that told us he was washed up. So I don't really agree with the narrative that people are trying to put on the Tennessee Titans, just acting like they're going to be unable to get DeAndre Hopkins involved. It's not that hard. You tell DeAndre Hopkins to run a fly, you see one-on-one coverage on the outside with no safety help over the top. You tell Ryan Tannehill to throw that thing up every single time. And Julio Jones is going to come down with it 80% of those situations. It's not that hard. People make it seem like DeAndre Hopkins has to be schemed open and you got to do all these super over complicated things to get him involved in the offense. It's not that complicated. DeAndre Hopkins has one of those skill sets that all you do is tell him go deep and you throw it down football. You throw the football downfield. It's like playing moss with your buddies outside. One person throws the football where this like 5 other people, they throw it up for somebody to go up and moss somebody and come down and catch the football. That's all you got to do with DeAndre Hopkins. Tell him go deep, throw the football up, and let him go get it. So I don't think that the Titans are going to waste DeAndre Hopkins like I keep seeing some people speculate and predict on social media. I got a homie of mine that hit me up a couple of days ago, and he told me that the Buffalo Bills are going to miss the playoffs. And I told him that that's really bold. That is a really bold prediction. And this isn't the first time I've heard somebody predict the Buffalo Bills failing to reach the playoffs this year. Okay, like, I've heard a lot of people on national media predict that the Buffalo Bills are going to fail to reach the postseason. And I've also had a couple of other people that I've talked to during school who think that the Bills aren't going to make it to the playoffs. So I think that the Buffalo Bills are being a little bit slept on. All right, and you look at the Stephon Diggs situation, regardless of what Josh Allen and anybody on the team says, we know that this situation is a little bit rocky. All right, and Stephon Diggs has a history of being somebody who can kind of be difficult at times. So I don't know why some people are trying to make it seem like, oh, it's just something that we're overblowing. When you have a player like Stephon Diggs who has a history of being a little bit of a diva in the locker room, of course, it's a little bit of a problem. You make it seem like this never happened before. When you have a history of being a repeat offender at something, you kind of start to develop a reputation. And that's what Stephon Diggs has developed. Same thing with Terrell Owens. And just because you have a player like Stephon Diggs who has the tendency to be a little bit of a drama king at times, that doesn't mean that you can't win with them. Now, you probably won't be able to win a Super Bowl with guys like this in your locker room, but you are at least going to be able to make it to a conference championship or even a Super Bowl. You just might not be able to win it. You see, Stephon Diggs, I don't think this situation is going to be enough to hold the Buffalo Bills back completely for being able to reach their potential. The Buffalo Bills, at worst, are a 10-win team. They still have one of the best overall rosters in the NFL. Their offensive line is a little bit shaky, but you got Josh Allen at quarterback. Josh Allen is one of the best QBs in the game right now. The run game, I mean, yeah, you might have some concerns about it, but it's not like you need elite running back play to win the Super Bowl. And then you look at their defense. Leslie Frazier steps down. Sean McDermott takes over. Sean McDermott is not a noob when it comes to defensive play calling. He was a really good defensive coordinator before he became a head coach. And the Buffalo Bills have a really talented defense. We know about how good their safeties are, but a lot of people are really sleeping on the Bills' pass rush this season. Y'all keep talking about Von Miller, but he isn't the only pass rusher that they have. They got Gregory Rousseau, who had 8 sacks last season. AJ Epinesa had 6.5 sacks. Some of these young pass rushers are starting to really turn into something difficult to stop. And then you got Ed Oliver. We already know about how good Ed Oliver is. This pass rush is being really overlooked. And when you look at teams that have the most success during the regular season, it's the teams that have a good pass rush and an elite quarterback. The Buffalo Bills, at worst, are a 10-win team. You look at this division, I don't think unless something catastrophic happens to Josh Allen that the Buffalo Bills are not going to make it to the postseason. This is still one of the most talented rosters in the AFC. Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the AFC, and we've seen over the last couple of years in this conference that the teams that go the furthest in the playoffs are the teams that have the great quarterbacks in the AFC. Look at the last 2 teams that we had in the AFC Championship game last year. Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. Those were the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL this season. The 2 best quarterbacks in the AFC. Same thing for the year prior. The teams that have the better quarterbacks advance further in the playoffs than the teams that don't have them. And the Buffalo Bills have one. And you guys make it seem like the Buffalo Bills have just been losing to anybody in the postseason. They lost to the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. One team that went on to win the Super Bowl and another one that ended up going on to lose the Super Bowl. It's not like they got upset in that wild card game against the Miami Dolphins. They came close to, and they did play really sloppy, but they still came away with the victory. You can't really give kudos for close calls. Close calls don't win games. What only matters is pulling out the W. The Buffalo Bills, I don't really think they're doing anything that really shows that they are imploding. I think the real expectations for Buffalo Bills fans is if Sean McDermott can finally get this team over the hump into the Super Bowl. So while some of y'all think that the Buffalo Bills should be lucky enough to make it to the playoffs because you're trying to predict their demise, their goals and their aspirations are the Super Bowl. And if Sean McDermott can't even get this team to the AFC Championship game this year, you wonder if they got to start having some tough conversations and maybe a tough decision. And you guys already know our mantra for those tough conversations. Those tough conversations normally turn into tough decisions. So the Buffalo Bills failing to reach the playoffs, I don't really see that happening. I think they would need hell of injuries plus Josh Allen being out for the season for them not to be able to reach the playoffs. If you haven't already, make sure that you go ahead, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We go live every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're enjoying this episode so far, leave us with a 5-star review. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews before the start of the college football and NFL seasons. So make sure that you go ahead, give us a 5-star review if you like the content and you want to support the channel. For those of you guys listening live, go ahead, make sure that you drop a follow on all of our social media platforms. Instagram, you can find us at JTSports_, Twitter at JTSports__, and we also are on Threads. Give us a follow on Threads at JTSports_. If you have a question that you would like answered on the future episode of the podcast, you can send them in the DMs. I read all my DMs and I will eventually answer your question on the potential future episode that we do. So make sure you go ahead, follow us on Instagram, Twitter at JTSports_, at JTSports__. Brent Venables is one of the other head coaches that have taken shots at Coach Prime. And Brent Venables, man, let's start that over, man. Brent Venables, along with the prior other coaches like Pat Narduzzi, has taken shots at Coach Prime. And for some reason, I don't understand why Deion Sanders keeps just being this stepping stone for these coaches to just criticize. Like, what's wrong with Deion Sanders running his program the way he sees fit? He isn't going on his media days and criticizing other coaches for how they choose to run their program. So Brent Venables, during Big 12 Media Day, had some really spicy things to say about Coach Prime's roster overhaul. So in the interview that he did with one of these radio stations, I'm about to show it on screen, Brent Venables, in an interview with KREF 94.7 FM, pointed out the difference between his style and that of New Colorado coach. And he said, I gave guys 12 months of grace. I was unlike Deion, Venables said. I gave guys 12 months of grace to figure it out. Here's 3. Go to class, live right off the field, and when you show up here, you show up with respect and appreciation with your opportunity. And if you go 0-for-3 for 12 months, you need a fresh start. So we help 21 guys, give or take, find a fresh start. Brent Venables, people, these are his comments about how he feels about Deion Sanders' roster overhaul. And here's the thing, right? He's not wrong, but at the same time, Deion Sanders still is right. At the end of the day, Deion Sanders has a job to do. And you can't get mad at him for taking advantage of the rules. There's nothing that Deion Sanders is doing right now with this roster overhaul that is illegal or against the rules. You can't get mad at a coach for taking advantage of the rules. If the rules didn't allow for Deion Sanders to do what he's done as far as how he's utilized the transfer portal, then you can't really continue to use him as this punching bag to nail your frustration on, because that's really what it sounds like. It sounds like these coaches are a little bit salty because they've lost talented players to the transfer portal, and they're mad that Deion Sanders is completely building his squad through the transfer portal. You see, Brent Venables, I think that he has bigger problems to worry about with how his season went last year in Norman than what Deion Sanders has going up there in Colorado. You see, Brent Venables, he's not wrong, but at the same time, this is how Deion Sanders chooses to run his program. And so far, what he has done hasn't delivered bad results or good results. We're in wait and see mode. But it's not like people are coming out making bold statements against Colorado saying, oh, I've been mistreated by Coach Prime. At the end of the day, Coach Prime had to change the culture of that locker room. When Deion Sanders got there, he walked into a situation where those kids didn't know anything that it took to win. He ended up walking into a group of his players who were blasting music before meeting. And that's one of Deion Sanders' biggest no-nos. So Deion Sanders had to basically get rid of those players that didn't have the kind of mentality that he wanted in his program. Now, the way that he did it, you can say that, it probably wasn't the most ethical. But at the end of the day, they hired Deion Sanders to do a job. He has to do what he has to do to win, to stay employed. Same thing with Brent Venables. So how somebody chooses to run their program is how somebody chooses to run their program. There's not a right or a wrong way to this as long as you're doing it within the rules. People are taking shots at the wrong people. Take shots at the people in the suits and ties that end up making the rules that allow these things to happen. The NCAA doesn't do anything that really solves any of the issues that we have with the transfer portal or the NIL. So Brent Venables, instead of taking shots at Coach Prime, should be taking shots at them. You just can't get mad at another coach for taking advantage of the rules. You got to get mad at the people that allow those rules to be taken advantage of. That's common sense.
Come on now, dog.
Come on.
Come on,
Talk
man.
to us, Boosie. You can't get mad at Coach Prime for going about his rebuild the way that the rules allow him to. You got to take that up with the people that allow these rules to be bended like that. If it was so much of a problem, Brent Venables, why don't you just go ahead and take it up with those guys? Why are you taking shots at Deion Sanders? That makes no sense to me. I'm really ready for this season to start. Because for those of you guys who really think that Colorado is only going to win 3 games, you're going to be incredibly surprised. Because Colorado is going to be way better than what a lot of you all think. And if they end up having a successful season where they at least make it to a bowl game and then some, do you not know how many other coaches are going to rebuild their programs that they get hired to in their first years in the same way that Deion Sanders has done so far with Colorado? You already know that it's a copycat league. So if Deion Sanders has success with the way that he's went about this transfer portal cycle, overhauling this roster, then there's other coaches that are going to follow suit. Kenny Dillingham was in the transfer portal just as much as Deion Sanders was, and nobody's talking about him. Brent Venables didn't take any shots at Kenny Dillingham. So I don't completely get why these coaches are so offended with what Deion Sanders is doing. They make it seem like they're taking up for the kids. If it's rubbing your skin such the wrong way, why don't you go ahead and pick up the kids that Deion Sanders let go into the transfer portal? Since you care so much about them, it's like you can't get mad at how somebody else chooses to run their program. There's not a morally wrong way that Deion Sanders has went about this. This is business. This is a performance-based business. And if you don't perform, you get fired. So therefore, Deion Sanders has to do what he sees as best fit for him to have success right away. Same thing with Brent Venables. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of things that Brent Venables has done, like Deion Sanders has done, that people would disagree with. The only difference is that this is Deion Sanders, and the name Prime just rings bells, and Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer, so he has a really polarizing image, a really polarizing position in college football in terms of popularity and the attentions that he brings. Meanwhile, you look at a guy like Brent Venables, it's like nobody's really keeping up with him as much as they're keeping up with Deion Sanders. It's like there's plenty of things that Brent Venables might have done that people didn't agree with. And maybe the local news articles and the local media over there in Oklahoma covered it, but nobody on the national level is talking about it. So, Brent Venables takes a shot at Coach Prime. What do you guys think about this? I'm eager to see you guys' comments about this down in the comment section below. Colorado is being severely slept on. They are a 19.5-point underdog as of right now, going into their week 1 matchup against TCU. And I know that week 1 is a couple of weeks away, but I'm just really interested to dive into this matchup because I think that Colorado has a really good opportunity at being able to pull off this upset. And this is what really confuses me when people talk about this game. They say, man, JT, TCU is just a much more talented football team than Colorado. And I asked them, okay, how many returning starters do they have on offense? 3. How much of their offensive production from last year do they return? 33%. So, who's their offensive coordinator? Do they retain their same offensive coordinator from last year? Oh, no, they don't? Oh, what happened to him? Oh, he went to Clemson? So who's replacing him? Kendall Bryles? So he's going to be instilling a new offense? Colorado? What are they going to be doing? Oh, instilling a new offense? Oh, okay. Is Colorado going to have a new starting quarterback? Oh, that's crazy because where's Max Duggan? Oh, Max Duggan, he's not here? Okay. So who's going to be replacing him? Oh, okay. Chandler Morris. So we get Shedeur Sanders versus Chandler Morris week 1, right? Who are you guys taking in the quarterback battle? Head to head, Chandler Morris or Shedeur Sanders? In a game like this, week 1, normally the team that gets better quarterback play has the better advantage at winning. Especially if they're trying to pull off an upset like this. And let's just be honest, I'm pretty sure most of us that are unbiased towards Colorado and don't have a grievance against Coach Prime are probably going to take Shedeur Sanders over Chandler Morris. Even if you're a TCU fan, you probably would take Shedeur Sanders over Chandler Morris. And don't give me anything about he played FCS, he played lower level competition, because there's been plenty of quarterbacks that played in the FCS, transferred to Division I, and still balled out. Most of all of them were really good. Prime example, Cam Ward with Washington State. He transferred from Incarnate World last year. So Shedeur Sanders should be really good. And you got the fact that Chandler Morris, he has a pretty good team around him. But we got questions about TCU at wide receiver. They lost 3 of their leading receivers from last season's team. So they pretty much have a lot of new faces in the passing game. And when you look at Colorado, their receiving core is fairly new too, but I think it's fair to say that Colorado has a better receiving core than TCU. You got Xavier Weaver, Jimmy Horn Jr., they both transferred from the University of South Florida, and they're really good. And then you got the fact that you're going to have Travis Hunter playing both sides of the football. Like, Deion Sanders didn't just go into the transfer portal and get a bunch of scrubs that couldn't play. This is Deion Sanders. He doesn't have to beg and plead for some of the best players to want to play for him. His name rings bells. If Deion Sanders, if you're watching this and you got a son that plays high school football and he had a couple of offers and Deion Sanders walked into his living room right now, he probably would be heavily thinking about playing for him. That's the effect of Coach Prime, the Prime effect. That's what they call it. So you look at the talent that Colorado has, really their strongest positions are cornerback, wide receiver, and running back, and quarterback. Every other position other than that comes down to the trenches. And their defensive line is pretty talented. It really is their offensive line that people have concerns about. But you look at TCU, their defensive line is losing two of their leading pass rushers from last season, D. Winters and Dalen Horton. So they have some concerns that they have to address up front. They're going to be plugging in new players. Same thing with Colorado. Even though those players that TCU is going to have stepping up, they already should have some familiarity with the system. And most of their defense from last year, their starters returned for this season. They returned 8 starters on defense. But I don't really think that TCU's defense is going to just come in and just shut down Colorado's offense. And I don't think that Colorado's defense is going to be completely lights out against TCU. I think this has the capability to be a very high scoring game. But you look at Colorado versus TCU, on paper, TCU, they don't have as many questions as Colorado, but they do have a lot of questions that a lot of people don't really know about. Colorado, yeah, they got a lot of questions that are going to be addressed, especially with how good they're going to be up front. But you know that Deion Sanders is going to be a really good quarterback, and you know that you have a really good group of wide receivers, and you got the talent at cornerback and in the secondary, and you got talent all over the team. It's just that you got concerns with what you have up front. And with TCU, they're replacing a lot of production from last season. So you're going to have players who are still in there trying to figure it out. You're going to be having a new OC in there. So there are a lot of things that I think factor into why I believe that Colorado can pull off this upset. Even though this is going to be a hostile environment on the road at TCU, I'm pretty sure that Coach Prime is going to have his guys focused and ready to play. And plus, TCU could come out a little rusty. And week 1 is the best time of the college football season to get a lot of upsets because some of the better teams come out a little bit flat the first couple of weeks into the year. You remember how Alabama almost got upset by Texas last year? So I think that when you look at TCU, they have just as many questions nearly as Colorado has. You don't really know what TCU is going to look like on offense with the new QB and having the new OC. Now, Colorado, I just have a little bit more faith in them because Deion Sanders is a better overall quarterback than Chandler Morris. He's a more proven quarterback than Chandler Morris. Like, Chandler Morris hasn't really proven anything. Like, even when he has played, he's been up and down. I'm more confident in Deion Sanders having a quarterback advantage over TCU. And then you look at the fact that their wide receiving core should be really good as well. And their secondary with Travis Hunter, you know what Travis Hunter can do. You know what Shiloh Sanders can do. So I think that Colorado is going to come in this game and prove to a lot of people why they're going to win more than just 3 games this season. And if you haven't already taken the free money with Colorado over under 3.5, you need to go ahead and get that, man. Go ahead, take Colorado 3.5. I am not a financial advisor. That is not financial advice. I'm just saying, you know, I don't see Colorado winning anything less than 6 games this year. They got a way better roster than what people are giving them credit for. Quinn Ewers, the biggest question with him is he going to end up living up to all the hype that he received coming out of high school? Last season, his first year as a starter, it was an experience. And it was a pretty up and down experience. You know, you had the Alabama game where a lot of people scream at you, myself included, Texas would have beaten Bama if Quinn Ewers was healthy. And then you have some performances that just make you go, man, like, are we sure this dude is going to be it this season? Are we confident that maybe his backup quarterback or maybe Arch Manning may not be able to dethrone him at some point this season? Quinn Ewers, going into 2023, should have a fantastic season. Okay, if you are going to ask me, JT, how good do you think Quinn Ewers is going to be this season for the Texas Longhorns? I think he's going to be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy this year. And that is one of my bold predictions for this season, but I don't really see how it doesn't happen. You got a really talented offensive line. You got to remember that Texas has recruited very well, especially when it comes to their offensive line. And they had a lot of young guys last season who are getting experience. Those guys are going to be better. They're going to be more developed. So this should be a really good offensive line. And they have one of the best receiving corps in college football. Their receiving corps probably is just as good as Washington's and Ohio State's. And no, they don't have a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., but they do have a Xavier Worthy that Quinn Ewers is going to be throwing to, Jordan Whittington, and you also got the fact that Isaiah Nayer is going to be fully healthy this season. A.D. Mitchell transfers from Georgia to Texas. There is too much talent for Quinn Ewers to not be a Heisman caliber QB this season. Quinn Ewers was rated one of the top quarterback prospects ever for a reason. He has a really good arm, but this dude has incredible ball placement. That's what a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to Quinn Ewers. Like when he throws that deep ball, he puts it in really good spots. One of his best throws last season was against Alabama to Xavier Worthy. I mean, that dude is a monster. So you look at how good his receiving core is, plus the fact that last season was his first year being a full-time starter, having that second year of experience, the game is going to slow down for him. He should take a big leap this season. And I think he's going to be in the Heisman conversation because it's a lot of talent around him. So he should put up a lot of great statistics. And plus, it's Texas. Texas is one of the biggest brands, not just in college football, but in all of football. So if he's playing good, everybody's going to be talking about it. And then that's one thing about the Heisman Trophy that people kind of overlook. The people who win the Heisman, most of the times, are the players that get talked about the most. The players who have the most Heisman moments. And Quinn Ewers is going to have a lot of opportunities to show us because he's going to be in a lot of big games this year. You're playing Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. That's one of the biggest games of the season, and it's really early. You got to play against Kansas. You know, Oklahoma should be better this year. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Quinn Ewers to prove himself. And also, there's a possibility that Texas can make it into the college football playoffs. They are the favorites to win the Big 12, and they do have one of the most talented rosters in college football this season. So if they end up not just winning the Big 12, but making it to the college football playoffs, then that also is going to boost Quinn Ewers' resume as well, because most of the times, the finalists for the awards are often participants in the college football playoffs. Look at Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan. You also had, who else? You had Hendon Hooker, who didn't get invited, but he was still a finalist in the voting. You also have Caleb Williams, who also was in the running to almost make it. So if your team is in contention to at least be considered for the college football playoffs, or you had a little bit of college football hype, but you slipped up somewhere along the late portion of the season, you're still going to get a little bit of consideration as long as you have the numbers to back it up. So even if Texas goes 10-2, as long as they slip up a little bit late in the season, but they're still competitive and they still are in their conference championship, they're going to have an opportunity for Quinn Ewers to win the Heisman. And if they make it to the college football playoffs and Quinn Ewers ends up balling out, I don't see how he doesn't win the Heisman. So I think that Quinn Ewers is going to be a Heisman caliber quarterback for Texas football in 2023. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you leave us with a 5-star review. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews before the start of the upcoming college football and NFL seasons. We currently are at 75-star reviews on Apple. We're only 30 away from 100, so go ahead, give us a 5-star review. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and